Welcome to another episode of Leadership Lessons. My guest today is Hank Garner, and we're talking about church finances done right, budgeting, stewardship, and transparency. Hank, thank you for joining Leadership Lessons.
Yes, sir. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Let me tell you about Hank. Hank Garner serves as the executive pastor of Lone Oak First Baptist Church in Paducah, where he helps oversee church operations, stewardship, and strategic leadership. Before coming to Lone Oak in 2018, Hank served in churches in Georgia, Florida, North Carolina, and Tennessee. He holds degrees from the University of Georgia, Go Dogs,
Go Dogs,
Liberty University, and the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. Hank and his wife, Dawn, have 3 children, one about to graduate from high school, and so they're at that season in life. Hank, I just really appreciate you and appreciate your leadership at Lone Oak. You serve so faithfully alongside Dan, and you serve so faithfully now alongside Scott, and there's no doubt that the church is grateful for you. I'm grateful for you as well. Let's jump into these questions. Also, I'll mention that Hank is in the middle of a building program, and there's no doubt that requires a lot of his time and attention. So we'll hopefully get to some of that during our time together. Tell us how you came to Lone Oak and what began your interest in kind of the financial side of local church ministry.
Well, I grew up in church media is where it all started. I'm from a little town in central Georgia, and one Sunday the minister of music there left, and my dad, who's the Sunday school superintendent, sent me to the sanctuary to figure out how to turn on the sound system because Bruce had left. And I was 12, and that's where it started. So I did church media in my first 3 churches, and then it was obvious that the Lord was calling me. It's actually not a hard jump from the media side with the level of administration required for that, and jumping into the executive church executive role. So
Interesting.
It was kind of a natural fit.
Hey, before you get into too much about the Lone Oak piece, what are some of the top functions of an executive pastor? Like if you were to, I know the priorities for my role, but what are some of the top priorities, functions, high level of an executive pastor?
Well, we come in 3 different flavors, I think. Number one is someone who is purely administrative, just making sure that the administrative functions of the church work like they're supposed to. The other flavor is leadership over the discipleship ministries of the church, leading the whole educational program, but with more of a 30,000-foot view even than the educational program provides. And then the third flavor is the right-hand man, chief of staff relationship to the pastor. Everything, David Self, who is the long-time executive pastor at First Baptist Houston, always used to say, it's everything that the pastor can't do, won't do, shouldn't do. And if he did do, we'd be in big do. That's the whole, his whole definition of the role of the executive pastor. And that's kind of what I do at Lone Oak, is the chief of staff, right-hand man stuff.
Well, you're sure good at it, and thank you for that work. It's an honorable ministry calling. Not everyone could do it, and if you didn't do if executive pastors who serve in a church like Lone Oak didn't do what they do, there's no way a pastor could do what he's expected to do. It's just a complementary, complemented gift sets. So how did you end up in Lone Oak?
Well, I was serving a church outside of Nashville, and Dan Summerlin sent me an email and said, I'd like to talk to you about coming to our church in Paducah, Kentucky. And I had never heard of Paducah, Kentucky. Well, actually, I had heard of it. The only thing I knew was that Stephen Curtis Chapman was from here.
Right.
But I told Dan that, my career plans did not include Paducah, but that I would talk to anybody and have dinner with anybody. So we got together, and 3 or 4 hours into dinner, we knew that the Lord was up to something. So that's how we ended up at Lone Oak.
He must have withheld from saying roll tide during all that time.
Well, I knew already that he was a big Alabama fan, and we just agreed to disagree most of the time.
Good for you. That says a lot about you. So, Hank, why is financial stewardship such an important part of healthy church leadership?
Well, when you think of what matters to a church, it's the same as what matters to a person.
Okay.
Show me your calendar and your pocketbook or your checkbook. And in church, it's show me your calendar and your budget, and I'll tell you what matters to you.
Mm-hmm.
We have an opportunity and a stewardship as church leaders to make sure that the stewardship of the people honors the Lord when they encouraging them to give faithfully, but also in how we use those resources to further the kingdom. And the that calling is you can't ignore it,
Sure.
and you can steward it well and hopefully reap a blessing from the Lord on that, or you can steward it poorly and reap desperation for the poor stewardship. And that's why it's important for churches to pay close attention to what they plan for their finances.
How obvious was it to you when you started looking at the financial documents at Lone Oak First Baptist that this church cares deeply about missions?
Man, missions has always been at the top of the list for Lone Oak. This is an incredibly generous church. These folks are a joy to lead. And I have friends in churches that can't say that.
Yeah.
Folks at Lone Oak are a joy to lead. And you look at the history of this church's involvement in missions everywhere that Acts 1:8 describes, in Judea or Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, the ends of the earth. They are committed to seeing the gospel advance here in Kentucky and around the globe. And it's really a blessing to know that these people are committed to that.
And Lone Oak is, both giving and going. Lone Oak is a top giving church through cooperative program and the offerings in Kentucky, but also a top going church. You're sending folks all the time. Hank, I had a follow up that one of the things that Lone Oak is also kind of known for is that your staff stays a long time. I mean, you probably have a number on the average tenure or how long folks stay. But once folks land there, they kind of stay put. Why is that? What is it about the church that they're able to hang on to top quality, skilled, gifted leaders for a long time?
I think Scott Thomas is the third pastor this church has had in 50 years.
Yeah.
And so leadership in the senior pastor role has been very strong. I followed Mike Williams, who was the longtime associate pastor here for more than 30 years. Yeah. Stan Reed was the children's guy and many other things in his 30 years. And our average tenure, I think the newest hire that on the ministerial staff besides Scott, who has been here for about coming up on 3 years, the newest hire was 6 years. So the turnover is low because the people care for the staff well. They follow well. They help us lead well. And I know that stability also helps them feel like they can hang on to us longer. So one bit of stability breeds trust, which breeds more stability, which breeds more trust, I think.
Yeah, well, it just feels really healthy and is just a great church. I'm glad you get to be part of that. So back on the finances, what are some of the most common financial mistakes that churches make, in your opinion? And what are some of the outcomes of those mistakes, like some of the results or consequences?
Well, we don't like to talk about it very much in church work, but I think one of the biggest mistakes is failing to do regular maintenance of facilities and keeping up with the ongoing just upkeep of a large facility or a facility of any size, because often when it's time to make hard budgeting decisions, you're forced to choose between personnel or some facility upgrade or sending more kids to to youth camp or children's camp, sending more missionaries to the field, or raising cooperative program
Sure.
giving, or what other, name your competing
Mm-hmm.
priority. And so the facility issue gets pushed further and further down, and then all of a sudden the church has no money saved up for tackling all of those things at one time.
Yeah.
And this isn't unique to Lone Oak. Lone Oak was very well prepared, I think, for the situation that we're in now. But I've seen it in several churches. You know, the other competing priorities, the other number one priorities for us, all sometimes lose to the important maintenance of what you've got already.
Yeah, and the air conditioning units are going to go out, and parking lots have
That's
to
right.
be kept up, and yeah, carpet gets old, and all those things have to be addressed. So, Hank, let's talk about budgeting. How can churches create budgets that reflect ministry and mission priorities, not just maintenance, but maintenance is part of it? So, I guess what I'm asking, I'd love for you to think about this. What are 2, 3, 4, 5 steps to crafting, creating a budget? Where does it start in your role, in your part of that work? Where does it start, and how do you kind of shepherd that process, or how is that process shepherded along at Lone Oak?
Sure. So at Lone Oak, it begins with the personnel budget. Honestly,
Okay.
basically trying to figure out the um, if facilities costs are fixed costs, right? You're going to have them no matter what. You're gonna have them. Insurance costs are fixed costs. Uh, Personnel costs are the next closest thing to fixed expenses. So you sit down and you determine, okay, what are we going to do from a personnel standpoint? And this happens about this time of year. So we're already building the personnel spreadsheet for 2027. What does the personnel side of things look like, and how does that feed into other priorities? Then the next thing down is going to be missions. We got to determine where we're going to go on next year's trips or next year's missions leadership priorities, that sort of thing. And then we come down to age graded ministries, preschool, children, students, and then adult ministry. And then we add the other ancillary ministries after that. So after we've dealt with life groups, then we do men's and women's ministries. We do young adults and upward sports,
Yep.
and all
Wow.
of those things that get added in there. And then we pull in, all right, now how much can we afford to spend on office supplies?
Yeah.
And those things. But you start with the things that, okay, what do we have to do? And then we build in, what do we want to do?
Mm-hmm.
And then trying to
good.
assign some kind of percentage to those things.
That's really good. Yeah. So, what do we have to do? What do we want to do, and what do we maybe get to do on the other side of that, or what's left after those and it is priority driven, right? I mean,
That's right.
and for Lone Oak, it's part of that priority has been personnel. It's just caring well for the staff. So let's, Hank, healthy financial transparency. What does that look like, in your opinion, in a local church? Like if a church member is receiving a copy of the budget to be voted on for the next year, what are they looking at? What is healthy transparency? What do you all just not? What do you not share, and yet maintain a healthy transparency?
Okay. So at Lone Oak, I recognize that we are a bit of a unicorn among large churches in that we still do a monthly business meeting.
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to be uncommon in a smaller church, but in a larger church, the monthly meeting has kind of gone away. But that gives us an opportunity to provide for everybody who wants to know. Everybody who shows up for the business meeting can get a copy of the church's finances. They can see come in and what's going out, and the basic categories to which it's going out. We keep salary information, personnel information close, But just because something is not a secret doesn't mean it can't be kept confidential.
Mm-hmm.
Any church member can come and see the entire personnel budget at any time. They just come to the office and they're welcome to see it. But generally, we report only the bottom line headings of the personnel budget. Um, but the opportunity exists for everybody to see everything. Another form of transparency that's important to me is that all of our expenses um, on every level are reviewed every week by the church's treasurer and assistant treasurer, who are volunteers.
Okay.
They are church officers by the Constitution, but they're volunteers. So they see everything every week, in addition to the staff who are responsible for writing the checks and getting things out, that sort of thing.
So they're seeing every expenditure.
Basically,
They're seeing
every
at a granular level every expenditure.
That's right. Well, they're signing the checks that,
Right.
That go out, and they do that every Wednesday. And if they have questions, which they often do, they'll ask me, and that's how we keep, and we can say to the leadership of the church that everything remains above board, and we want to make sure that you don't even want to come close to the line of impropriety.
Sure. Yeah, that's good. That helpful information. So, how can pastors and finance teams build trust with church members when discussing money? And you're saying one thing is through a healthy transparency. You've talked about, without using this term, an accountability system where spending is not controlled. The budget controls spending and sets the direction for it, but it's being reviewed by someone other than the one that's making the expenditure. How would you elaborate on that, or what would you add to that to help church leaders build trust for those who are paying the bills, right?
Right. So as Baptists, we are congregationalists.
Yeah.
I mean, that is, to be Baptist, you can't fire your congregation, right? And so let the congregation elect folks who can see into all of the processes, and let that develop trust and more hands in a transaction. I think another pitfall for some churches might be having decision-making rooms that are too large for small decisions, right? The church gathers and makes big decisions together.
Mm-hmm.
But for small day-to-day decisions, if you've got to make sure that 14 people are involved in those decisions, that's too big.
Yeah.
But if you leave some decisions, or at least oversight of some decisions, to a too small a group, that provides the opportunity for something that at least looks untoward. So finding that balance between what room decisions are made in being the right size, I think is very important. And that's part of the accountability. We have multiple hands in all of our transactions, multiple reviewing, but that doesn't go out to just everybody.
Hank, what would you say to maybe a smaller church that doesn't have the systems in place like Lone Oak does? Maybe there's one person that's kind of handling the money. Maybe they're receiving the deposit for the week, making the deposit, paying the bills, writing the checks, reporting to the church. They're doing it from a good place, a good heart. They love the Lord. It's a lot of work, right, on that treasurer, but not the most accountable system. How would you help a church like that, where there's a good high level of trust already, to move towards something that is more accountable to protect that treasurer? What would you suggest to the congregation if they were open to hearing some advice?
I think I would say to that treasurer, you really want somebody to be alongside you.
Yep.
Find somebody else unrelated to just come and check your work. That way, if there is any kind of error, somebody else has the opportunity to spot it and help fix it. But also, it's the greatest defense against the charge that a simple error became something more nefarious than it was.
Right.
Multiple hands in the transaction is not only an accepted accounting principle, but also good stewardship defense against the enemy's desire to sow discord in our churches.
Yeah, that's good. So let's talk about your building program. So you're in the middle of one right now. Describe what's happening at Lone Oak building wise. Give a kind of a big picture, and then we'll get some specific questions about how that's all going.
chaos, anarchy, crazy,
It's
constantly.
it's a
No,
big deal. Y'all are having to tear down buildings to build more buildings, that sort of thing, right?
that's right.
Yep.
We had several sections of the building that were original to this campus, about 60 years old, that needed some major overhaul, but we just ran out of um, possibilities to overhaul those buildings because every time okay, let's do this, let's fix this, it led to 1, 2, 10 more things that had to be done at the same time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so eventually the price tag for renovation became a ridiculous number. Okay, so let's just tear down that space and bring back space that is usable and is structurally sound, because structure was one of the problems with the buildings that we tore down. And so as we did that, we went through a process of trying to figure out what we believe the church looks like on the 5, 10, and 15-year horizons.
Yeah.
And then we sized, we think appropriately for those things. One of the biggest things in our master planning, we needed new children's ministry space. And so that's a big piece of our project. Lone Oak has, because of the original design, we had a number of small hallways, and the church had really just grown beyond the ability for everybody to fit single file down the hall. And so that was another thing, expanding our lobby spaces and circulation. And in order to do that well, we've had to tear up massive sections of the church's campus to pull it off. We've also replaced every HVAC unit that in the part that's remaining. We've built a new boiler room. I mean, all of those things that you'd never see that are incredibly expensive all had to be done at one time. But that means that we've been short on parking. So we're shuttling people from the far reaches of the campus from off-site parking. We're short on or we're long on steps. So folks who are accustomed to just getting out of the car, walking right in the building, their parking space is gone. Now they're parking somewhere else. They got a long way to go. And also where we had life groups, Sunday school classes meeting in the same place for 30 or 40 years, right? They're in the same room. This is their room. And in the last 2 years, they've moved 6 times.
Wow.
Because every week they come in, there's something new, or there's a wall that was in one spot has now been moved, or there's now a wall where there wasn't one. So those temporary accommodations are annoying to everybody. And one of the ways that we kind of talked them into this challenge at the very beginning, not to sell the project itself, but to help everybody understand what was going to happen, was telling them right up front, y'all, this is going to be awful. We're going to hate it. We're going to be so tired of construction by the time we're done, but look at what will be when we get finished. And trying to point people to the long run view of what the church's campus will be helps them deal with, where am I going to park today? And that's a really hard. We literally took all of their seats out of the sanctuary, and we moved the sanctuary for 15 weeks last summer. And so nobody sits where they've always sat. Those things that tend to disrupt Baptists, we've done it all.
Hank, and you're in the middle of that, and it's going to go on you've got a long way to go, right? What is
maybe the end of this year, we'll see.
Okay. What does the finished product look like? What folks who haven't been to Lone Oak in 5 years, if they went in at the end of this year, first next year, what will be different?
Well, you'll be able to find a parking space. You'll be able to find your way in. Lone Oak used to have 36 unique entrances to the building. 36. Now we will have 4.
Okay.
Yes. So everybody will know where to go. This is the front door. Is going to be an important thing. You'll be able to find where to drop off your kids, and hopefully do that quickly, and then get right on into the sanctuary. You'll be able to find your life group. And then at the end of all of it, there is space finally for folks to gather before, between, and after services, because that after church fellowship, go get your kids first from preschool, so we don't hear from the preschool teachers, but the after church fellowship helps keep the spirit of the church congregation together throughout the week.
Well, and the church, from all what I can see, is thriving. I mean, you're just baptizing folks left and right, and it appears like new people are constantly coming in. So even in the midst of a great amount of chaos, nobody's happy about it. It seems like the Spirit of God's at work, and the church is just doing well. From what I can see, is that the way it is?
God has been good to us
Good for you.
in every way.
Hank, what are some systems or safeguards that every church should have in place to ensure financial accountability?
Definitely the multiple hands in transaction. Definitely an ongoing conversation with the church about how the finances are. So Baptists often get, if you say that things are well, you've got some Baptists who are going to hear that as, okay, good, I can stop giving.
Mm-hmm.
And you can, if you say that things are not going well, you got some Baptists who will say, okay, I'll start giving, or they'll say, uh-oh, something's wrong, I'm going to stop. So you have to be transparent about what's actually happening in terms of giving, but also craft that so that all the Baptists in the room hear it as positively, but as truthfully as possible. So transparency and truth, and accountability for what is actually taking place.
And reminding of that great vision of what you're trying to accomplish. I mean, you all are literally trying to reach the world from Lone Oak, Kentucky, and God's using you in that. Hank, part of your role is stewardship, and so not just the spending of the money, but also trying to help generate generosity or help folks think about financial faithfulness as a follower of Jesus. What would you say to that church that really doesn't have much of a stewardship plan? Maybe they don't even talk about tithing often. Some churches have even stopped passing the offering plate, during COVID, and haven't picked that back up. No judgment there, but that's just reality. What do you say to churches about maybe putting a strategy in place for teaching biblical generosity?
Giving and personal stewardship is a discipleship matter. It reflects where the priorities of the person are.
Yep.
And teaching people that, I believe that people are willing to hear that it is good for their soul to be open-handed with what the Lord has entrusted to them. And if you keep that in front of them and they see the biblical command, or at least the biblical model for it, and Jesus talked about money a lot. Because it's about what matters to your heart. And I think if you set aside a few weeks every year to talk honestly about the church, or to the church about the discipleship matter of orienting your personal finances in a way that honors the Lord, that the giving will follow that.
Yeah, that's so good. So, Hank, this platform is called Leadership Lessons, and last question is, what is one leadership lesson you've had to learn the hard way? And what we're looking for, honestly, is the most embarrassing, painful story that you've experienced that you can actually talk about publicly. And I think you have one, and so tell us a little bit about that, and maybe some things you've learned on the other side of it.
Yes. Well, I've been fired, which is not uncommon to Baptist ministers, I understand. But my wife and I found ourselves both having lost our jobs. We were serving the same church staff in South Florida. But the economic reality of the day made it so that the church had to release 7 members of the ministerial staff on the same day. And both of us were all of a sudden, with a brand new baby, didn't have a job.
Wow.
And so the Lord showed me through that time a whole bunch of different lessons. Number one is how to treat people when they leave you, whether that's their decision or the church's decision, how to treat people when they leave you. Another biggie there is how to steward the church's resources when economic times aren't well, how to spend when you are suddenly tithing on the last paycheck you're going to receive. It makes you think a little harder about whether you're spending or leading the church to spend a precious widowed lady's tithe, the widow's mite, the right way. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways that I've gotten from a leadership perspective out of that situation. And the Lord has been good all the way along.
How'd you and Don see God's hand during that difficult transition? How did the Lord just show up when, I mean, you didn't have you're both out of a job. Those were your incomes are gone and a new baby.
Yep. Yeah. The Lord took care of all of those things. There was a church in North Carolina that was looking for somebody who could do children's ministry, and she went and interviewed, and they took us.
Yeah.
And the Lord helped us sell our house, which was hard to do in the Great Recession in South Florida. And then He provided work for me, and here we are today. And so we have become grateful for that situation, even as hard and painful as it was when we were going through it.
It's those most difficult experiences that follower of Jesus, that you see the Father and you see He's faithful, and you wouldn't go through it again for anything. You wouldn't want to, but you also wouldn't change it for anything, because you just get to meet God in ways that you otherwise wouldn't have. Well, Hank, thank
That's
you.
right.
Thank you for your ministry, brother. Thank you for being in Kentucky. Thank you for serving faithfully at Lone Oak First Baptist, and thank you for taking the time to join Leadership Lessons.
Absolutely. We're so grateful for the ministry of the KBC and for you, Dr. Gray.
Thanks for listening to Leadership Lessons. An audio podcast of this program is available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and more. The Kentucky Baptist Convention was created by churches for churches to help churches reach Kentucky and the world for Christ. For more information about the KBC and the cooperative program which fuels our ministry, go to kybaptist.org. We'll see you next time on Leadership Lessons.